Yo, what's up, guys, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Soundproof podcast. We're super lucky today to have Mo Falk with us. What's up, dude?
Hey, what's good?
And as always, you've got myself, Tom Wilson, and we have Jonth here as well.
What's good?
So yeah, just like every week, we're just going to be talking through some music industry related topics and talking through what Mo's been up to recently. So yeah, what have you been up to recently, Mo?
Recently, I have been streaming way too much, making not enough music, and staying inside, like I guess most people, right?
It sounds relatable at the moment, honestly.
Yeah. I feel like Twitch has become a really popular thing for a lot of EDM producers to do as well. I saw Chris has started doing it, Rudelice, and now Retrovision's doing it. You're doing it as well. How long have you been streaming for, by the way? I never figured that out.
I just recently hit 1 year. So I think I started in February. So I'm now getting how every month they can resub and stuff, and I'm getting 13-month subs. So, a little over 13 months I've been doing it. And I mean, it's been quite a ride because in the beginning it was nothing. There was only 20 people in, and I was kind of demotivated. And now it's actually popping off, and it's hey, nice.
That's nice, man.
So yeah, wait, why did you start that then in the first place? What made you start streaming?
Honestly, the idea behind it was, I always wanted to stream. I always wanted to be a content creator. I just wanted to make the typical dream, you make a lot of money and you don't work for it, because you just play video games for a living, right? That's the typical dream you have when you're 14 or something. So when we had the first lockdown in Germany, I was okay, a lot of people are taking up streaming, and that sounds like it's a cool thing. I can probably entertain people live, and then I just tried it out. And from there, I've just, stuck with it because, I'm one of these people, I'm going to try something, but then I don't give up. I just will do it for the rest of my life. Don't ask why. It's just, So that's the thing. I'm now a streamer. That's now, I can't stop anymore.
This is the way to do it, man. This is super relevant to what we talked about a lot recently on the podcast, though. Is how... with music and everything as well, if you want to push out music, it's not an artist is not just about the music anymore. It's so much about the content you create. It's 50% music and 50% social media content and all these YouTube videos and Twitch streams and stuff. So that's dope that you've got into that. 100%.
Would you say it's 50-50 though?
I wouldn't even. It's more. I'd say it's more the social content's more important.
Exactly.
Honestly,
I don't know. I think it really depends, honestly, on what. It's what Magnus said the last episode. He said that he's following a lot of artists that only do a post a month on Instagram, but their whole brand is just revolving around high quality music. You can do it that way too, but then you got to push out a lot of really good music.
I think that's more of in today's age though. You're more of an anomaly if you're doing that. Honestly, you can put out one track and do a shit ton of marketing and be really active on social media, and it'll do way better because of it. I feel like.
Yeah. I think it's also something to do with established artists versus upcoming artists.
Yes.
I would say nowadays with the just sheer amount of people actually starting out and being pretty good at what they're doing, I think if you're not also pumping out massive amount of content and making good music and everything else, right? I think you're just going to go under. You're not going to be as much... I think the potential to blow up isn't as high with just making music the traditional way, right?
Absolutely.
Compared to doing it on YouTube, doing it on, I don't know, TikTok is now super big for some reason. Even still Instagram, so...
Yeah, and that's something that I've been thinking about so much lately. It's people who actually get good at music nowadays. They get good so quickly.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah, that's true.
But all the resources are there now compared to before, though. That's the thing. It's so especially with samples. Okay, we're talking about Splice for the 500th time, but it's so easy to find good samples in Splice, which just wasn't available a couple of years ago in the same way it is now.
Yeah, but it's not just that. I remember when I started out, I was 11 years old. There was one tutorial on YouTube with Bass Hunter making a melody or something. That was the only thing I had to look at for a tutorial. The rest of everything I had to figure out on my own. And that's not really a good thing to do. I had to figure out what every button did, and there was no tutorials on music theory that I actually found engaging and all that.
It was the same for me.
Oh yeah?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the kinds of resources that like exist now, there's just an abundance of it, you know? And I feel like it really helps out the new up and coming producers.
Well, you can have a tiny little problem. Like you could be like, oh, why is my mix so muddy? And you just search on YouTube and you've got like 500 people telling you like,
yes,
you need to do this with your EQ. And like, okay, maybe half of them probably aren't helpful, but like you can find anything you need to do on YouTube now, like within 2 minutes, you know?
And not only that, there are Facebook groups, Discord channels, and everything with a bunch of people who have the same problems and people who have solved the same problems and people who are actually like professionals in this like field who could just tell you what the problem is.
Yeah.
Forums like this didn't exist back then either. So this is, I don't know, this is huge. It opens up a lot of doors for like new producers, and it also makes it easier for people to become more established. But then we come around to this like, I don't know, the climate we're in right now, where you have to have something else, you know? You have to like be on social media, and you have to show yourself. You have to show your personality. You need to be more likable for you know?
That's what I was going to say. I think it takes away the focus from the music, right? Because now making outstanding music isn't actually as impressive anymore, right? Because like you can get FL Studio, you can sit down for 2 years and you'll probably be able to make a sick track. Like, if you really invested and you invest the time in actually getting better, like, I wouldn't see why it would take much longer than like 2, 3, 4 years. Like, after 4 years, I would say, you know, you're probably at a point where you can release really good music. Compared to before, like, people would spend maybe, 20 years learning mixing. Like, I remember myself, even though that was like 5 years ago, I learned sound design from a mate. Like, there was no videos on YouTube or anything. Like, he gave me his Serum license. He's like, okay, I'm going to show you how to do it. Because I was like super lost. And I couldn't have just looked up how to make this and this bass on YouTube. And then there's like, you know, like the 50 Indian videos that, you know, I just don't want to be discriminated. Like it's
these
just,
kids are so spoiled these days. They don't know what. They don't know how well they have it.
They don't know how back in the day it used to be so much better.
Yeah,
it's like this is the whole thing where like back in my day, and your parents are like, oh, they had to walk 50 miles to get water, sort of thing.
That's
right?
exactly what it is. Back in my day, we didn't have cell phones.
Literally, man.
Yeah, man, that's exactly what it is. Anyway, I feel like we've been sitting on this topic for a while though, but actually, something that I've not been 100% sure on this, but Mo, you do music full time now, right?
Yes,
completely full time.
I mean, yes, like with everything we just talked about, like all the content around and everything. Yes, I would say I'm like a full time artist, musician thing.
Everything you do revolves around your brand and your music. Then.
Yes,
okay,
100%.
And do you find that sustainable right now?
At the moment, not really, but I like, the thing is, I'm getting to a point now where it starts to become sustainable, so it's difficult for me to answer that right now. Like, I think it isn't sustainable if you're starting out, but it becomes very sustainable and lucrative once you're at at the point where you're kind of taking off like a little bit. I think then it's actually really sustainable and much more sustainable than just doing the music thing.
With your music being stuff you would probably mainly look at playing out a lot of it in clubs, like, have you found lockdown has like helped in the sense of helping you build your brand, or is it more affected you in the sense that you can't play shows and earn extra money from that as such? How would you say that's affected you?
I think both ways. So I think in one way, obviously, right, festival scene's kind of dead at the moment and was dead for the last year. So obviously, right, the whole like live aspect is gone, and I would have maybe been able to play a show in Japan and in China and stuff. Like, I don't know if that was really gonna happen, but I was talking about it and it might have happened. It would have been really, really cool, and I would have probably been fine if I just had like these 2 shows for the rest of the year, right? And now I didn't have them, so I kind of needed to look a little bit for like extra money and stuff. But right, even though there's no festivals and all of that, for me personally, I think it was very, very positive that it wasn't there, because of it, I started like the community thing, right? Like, I did my YouTube, I did my Twitch, and now I would say I have like a decent amount of people. Like, it's not a massive amount. Like, I'm not like PewDiePie or something. But there's still a big community behind me now that support me and help me and, you know, are interested in me no matter what I do. Whereas before, people would just like the music, right? They'd just be like, yeah, that track is really cool. Whereas now they're like, yeah, Mo Falk is really cool, right? And that change, for me, that was really, really valuable. And I think it was more valuable than compared to as if there would have been shows. And, you know, that change probably wouldn't have happened if there were shows. But I still really miss just playing shows and it doesn't go unnoticed, of course.
I think that now, thanks to this whole pandemic thing, because you went into social media and branding so much, once this whole thing blows over, you'll come out at least twice as like strong as an artist, and you'll be way more attractive to book for like promoters and everything like that. So I think that at the end of the day, for you at least, this was a very good thing because you capitalized on the opportunity.
I think a lot of artists have done that during this. So a lot of the proactive artists have pulled their finger out and gone, do you know what? I want to spend this time to build on my brand. And I think a lot of people are realizing now that you've got to do all this extra content and you've got to be doing 20-hour days where you're burning yourself out with making all this content and stuff. Like, honestly, lockdown is part of the reason Soundproof is a thing now, because we it's the same thing Mo's been talking about. We wanted to create a community where we get people on and we can show like artist personality, because as we said, at the end of the day, like it's the whole thing is as much about being a social media influencer now as it is about being a musician. The music is just the interesting part, you know. It's the part that people are invested in. It gives you some sort of niche. So
like, I would say, think about it like every other content creator, right? Let's just talk about like a gamer on YouTube, right? Like their interesting thing is that they're playing a game really well or really funny or whatever they're doing with it. And the reason they're famous is because of their personality and the content they produce. And I think it's no different for musicians. It's just we're really good at making music, so that's our thing. But we're not famous only for the music. We're famous for everything else. Like, not famous, but like, you know, I think it's
because it is really hard to bring. It's really hard to bring your personality into music in the sense of like you have to bring it into the branding and doing this content. Whereas if you're like PewDiePie or someone, he shows it instantly through his YouTube, as you were saying before. So I think it's exactly like what you're saying now. It is the thing where like you have to try and bring your personality into your brand, and that can be really hard for people who aren't naturally like content creators or aren't naturally wanting to present themselves on camera. You know what I mean?
Which is actually funny, because I would say most musicians or like producer musicians aren't, right? Because we're like traditional, we're like the nerds that sit at home, do nothing and just focus on like, hey, can I use that kick? And then we like 8 hours later we realize, oh wait, we should have maybe worked on the snare a little, you know? Like I think we're like super nerdy, and for us to be like so public with everything, I think it's actually quite difficult, and I think it's going to open the industry a lot for like different types of producers as well. Like, I would say 10 years ago, the biggest and most effective producers were those that were the most creative. And now it's actually much more about like, how entertaining are you? Like, how good can you hold the attention of people? And like, even through music, like not only just the content, but also like, I think of it like with production as well. It's like the attention span of people is maybe like 2 seconds, because how long are they going to wait? Like if they see one TikTok, right, they just go boom, next. And if it's not funny, they just keep swiping. And it's the same with music. Back in the day, they would listen to the full vinyl. Now it's like they skip through it until they hear something like that just catches their attention. So I think everything's just been getting like super more compact in a way.
It's a super good point, because the first time I listen to a song now, my attention span is super short now. Like I skip straight to the drop, and if I don't like the first 2 or 3 seconds of the drop of like an EDM song, if I'm listening to an EDM song, I'll just skip it. But I listen to the drop before I review the break, if you know what I mean.
I know, right? I skip it. Like if I like the drop, I give the break a chance. You know, I never like listen to the structure the way it's supposed to be listened to. And I feel like whenever I make my songs these days, I try to change that, you know? So whenever you hop into the break, I try to make the beginning of the break as interesting as possible, so you don't like just move into the drop the first thing you do.
Yeah. I mean, I try as well, but it's so hard, man. It's so hard.
Because everyone just has the habit of just ditching the break and just hop into the drop.
but like we listen to so much more EDM music than probably most people listen to. So we just go into like it's like when we go into a demo session, we listen all the way through, but like I just want to listen to the drop straight away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm one of those people.
I like when I started streaming, I had a thing where instead of doing feedback sessions, I would do like A&R feedback sessions. So it would allow me to just like be like super picky about stuff, like be like, okay, I'm just gonna skip to the drop because every A&R would do that anyways, and I will listen to it only for 1 second and tell you what's wrong with it, and then go to the next one. And that was actually so fun because that's really how I would like to give feedback, right? Like just listen to it for like 5 seconds, hear what I hear, tell them next, right? But instead, like sometimes, I mean, it's also very nice to listen to the full song, but not always. Like you just kind of want to.
Yeah, that's actually super smart. I feel like that might be very helpful as well for like, I don't know, in the demo sessions that we do, Tom. Maybe like we could try this for one session. Just let them know that this is what we're gonna do now, because then we can go through as many demos as possible. And if there's a clear issue with the song, like that we can hear instantly, we just say that, and then that's going to be the issue you need to focus on before we even say anything else about the song.
Yeah, because an A&R will listen to it that way. So
exactly. But because I feel like when people send songs into demo sessions, they literally just want other people to hear them. They don't really care much about the feedback. And
there's a good point to that as well.
Yeah, I remember that's at least what I was thinking when I started sending my songs into like demo sessions. And I didn't even think I was particularly good. I just wanted to hear what everyone else was saying about the song.
I think a thing about a lot of demo sessions though, like something, especially when we were doing them like the other weekend, is we went very, very in depth with feedback compared to most, and I don't think they were expecting that. I think a lot of people just expect you just to go, this is a cool track or this is shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say there's actually a lot of value still. Like even the A&R thing is cool, but I still think there's actually much more value. I mean, obviously. When you're actually giving like detailed feedback and constructive, like I think there's also a lot of like people that give feedback very, like they may give the right feedback, but they convey it in the wrong way. Like they say the wrong things, even though they mean the right things. Like, for example, when I give feedback, right, I say, if I were you, I would do this. Then there's no criticism, there's nothing. It's just if it were me, right? I'm not even criticizing their abilities to do anything. But there's a lot of people who are just very, like, it gets very offensive very quickly as well. Like, I take very big offense if someone is like, yeah, this is shit, you should change that. If they had said the same thing, but with the right wording and, like, constructively, right, I would have maybe actually listened. But like, in that way, I couldn't even take the criticism properly, right? So I think there is a lot of value in really good feedback, which is why, you probably still do it, I still do it, but
a lot of the stuff when we get to our level and we ask like each other to give each other feedback, like we send it around to each other, a lot of the time it is personal opinion as well, as you're saying. Like it isn't like, oh, you should do this massive thing with the mix. It's more just like, oh, personally I'd do this, because I think when we're sending tracks around to each other sort of thing, we understand what we need to do. It's just more asking for the opinion of the idea, if you know what I mean, which is it's a different way of giving feedback, because when you do it in a demo session, it's like, oh yeah, you should EQ this out or do this. Like there's always like issues which go deeper than that. But like
it's almost funny like when we send tunes to each other in our social circle, because if you get someone who says, nah, it's not for me, then there's nothing wrong with the mix, there's nothing wrong with the melody. Like objectively, there's no like criticism. It's just that it was personally not a good song, like to that like individual who listened to the song.
Yeah, that's true.
So if the only feedback you get is like personal preference, then you did good,
100%.
So that's
true.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So
we've been dwelling on this for a while as well, and I really wanted to talk about this SAE SAE certificate you got. So you went to music school, did you?
I did, yeah. I did.
You sound like you regret it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't regret it, but it's always like, I regret it afterwards. Like in hindsight, I wouldn't do it again, which is why like it's very like annoying to talk about, but let's do it. I'm up for it. Let's go.
All right. So did you feel like you learned anything valuable in school? Like just because you went for music production solely, right?
Yeah, it was just music production. I mean, so I think the correct thing to say here would be, like, I did learn a lot of stuff, and I think my expectation was just very different from, like, when I went in, I expected to learn how to actually produce music, like make electronic music. Whereas what I was being taught was actually just like technical mixing and mastering and like production stuff, which was like more like a traditional sound engineer thing, right? So instead of actually learning how to make the music, I learned how to record it, how to properly behave in the studio environment, how to, build your own compressors, how does, like all sorts of more technical stuff, which now, like, because we just talked about feedback, actually really helps me. And I think without it, I wouldn't be at the point where I'm now. But I also think that nowadays, like maybe not back then, but nowadays you can get the exact same education on YouTube, which is pretty sad to say, because like I did pay a lot of money to go there, and yeah.
Well, the thing that I've come to realize, especially because I give like guidance to people, like I teach people music production and like a little bit of like amateur music theory, but the necessary things. And what I've come to realize is that if someone is kind of lost in what they're doing, they don't know what they need to learn. Like they don't know what they need to know. So literally most of what my lessons consists of is me figuring out what these people need to learn. And I give them a little bit of tips and tricks and stuff like that. But then I also say, you should watch some videos on this. This is what you should learn. And I also feel like a lot of like teachers, at least in like universal level, they literally don't teach you. They just tell you what you need to learn.
Yeah. So I wanna add to this. So I considered doing like music production at university, and I didn't do it in the end. I'm doing media production at the moment. Yeah. But I know quite a lot of people at my university who are doing music production, because I've wanted to find my way into the studios there and use the equipment and stuff. So I know quite a few of the guys who are doing it. And they said to me they got told like for a whole hour they had a guy explaining how a compressor works, like the exact like specifications of it, and like
1 hour is pretty nice, man. I had like for like 10.
Jesus. They were saying like they got explained this in an hour, and then I basically just said my understanding of it in 2 minutes. I'm like, oh yeah, that clicked like way better, if you know what I mean. So it's like I think it's not really helpful in the sense, like, I personally, if you know what you want to do in terms of music production, and you know what sort of music you want to make, try and do it on YouTube. I don't think music school is really necessary, like, for that stuff personally, because I just feel like it's a waste of money at that level. You're better off putting that money somewhere else to try and learn
that's
music.
True. Or just invest it in your marketing.
Literally, like a lot of the stuff that we do though, like, is not technically correct. Like, I think a lot of technical music producers would turn around and go, "What the fuck are you doing? That's like you've got 5 OTTs on your okay, maybe not do that, but not. You know what I mean though. Like, you do all this stuff,
you break
which is
the rules in a constructive way. In a way,
it's at the end of the day, the music we've made is probably, like, I hate to sound cocky again, but it's probably like way better than anything they've made, because I've heard some music from people who are technically professionals, if you know what I mean. And I personally don't like the way they create stuff, and that's because they're following all the rules. I feel like that's like just not a thing anymore. Like, just make music, and if it sounds good, it sounds good. You know what I mean? So I don't if you really want to go to music school, you can, but I honestly think you're better off just learning it yourself now on YouTube and stuff.
I think I do agree. But I think that only goes to a certain extent, because you still need to know a lot of stuff. Like, you need to know all the basics. You need to know how everything works. And whether that is self-taught or from YouTube or from university, I think you still need to know, like, the basic framework of what the theoretical correct way would be. So then you can do your own way and break it in, like, correct, like, because if you're like, oh, I don't know anything, but I'm just going to do it and I think it sounds cool. Like, that's not how it works. Like, so you still need like a pretty big, I would say, like, general knowledge about everything.
You need to understand what you're doing so you can break the rules and do it in a different way.
But I totally agree. Like the traditional correct way of doing it is very, very overrated, I would say.
I think if you want to do like engineering for like bands and stuff, that's a completely different thing. Like you do have to follow the rules then, and that's a reason you should go and do it. If you want to be like a studio engineer, I think there's still a place to go to music school and learn that stuff, because then you probably do need to know the stuff you were taught at uni inside and out, SAE inside and out.
And I think, the big takeaway that I had from the whole SAE thing is, like, you do learn stuff, and like you said, like, they may not tell you exactly what you need to know, but at least they explain a lot of things. And I think there's where the difference is between, like, people that just do it, they just go to uni, they learn their stuff, they go home, and then they watch Netflix. And there's the people, like, I would consider myself, or like maybe you, or like, people that actually make it. In a way, like, that sounds very weird, but where, like, I think there's much more interest that goes deeper than that. So when I learned about compressors, or I built one in uni, right? I didn't just go home and be like, yeah, sure, that was it, and do something else. No, I would go home and then, like, actually try to build one again, then go into my FL, try to understand how it works, then try to build one myself one more time, then just apply it every single day, because I was making music every day, right? And at the end, now I would say, like, I can probably just, like, I know how a compressor works. But if you just get told, yeah, the attack does this, the decay does this, and then you just okay, thanks. Like, that's not very good.
Yeah.
Well,
Right, so
I mean, I think it's funny how compression is always the topic that people talk about when they're talking in this, like, context.
Yeah, I love it because it's nobody understands it if they have never really, like, been taught it, because apparently it's very difficult to understand, which I don't get, but
No,
God,
but the thing is, it sounds like, if you look at it, if you just have a glance at a compressor, it looks very difficult to use.
Yeah.
But, like, if you just get to know the knobs, it's not really that difficult to use of a.
I'm clipping that out of context. I'm just saying.
I think it's very easy to use, actually. I think it's so intuitive. Like,
yeah.
I mean, maybe not if you just have knobs, but even nowadays, like, all the, like, graphical compressors, like, I don't know, FabFit or something, like, you can see what it's doing right there.
It's
like,
so
there's
helpful.
a visual representation.
It's the whole thing. It's using it in practice. It's like, if you love what you do enough, you'll go home every night, and as you say, you'll practice until the point where you just understand what it does, and it just becomes natural, like, just using it.
So, Mo, I know that you're a very good music producer, but I've also come to learn just today that music production is not the only, like, musical skill that you have. You play a lot of instruments as well, don't you?
Yes. How have you come to learn that today?
Well, I read your bio. To be honest.
Damn! All right.
So, what do you play? What is it you play? I actually just glanced over it and just took notes. So, what is it you actually play?
So right now I'm not playing anything, to be honest, and I haven't been playing any instruments for, I think, like 3 years. But before that, I started very early. I'd say like 6 years or something, and I started, like, learning piano basics. Wasn't really my thing. Then I went to choir. Wasn't really my thing, because then, like, I got, like, the, when you grow up enough and you, like, become a teenager, you can't really sing properly anymore. What is that called? Like,
puberty.
Yeah, basically, right? Then I played cello, actually, for a pretty long time, like, I would say 4 or 5 years. Got pretty decent at it. And then my whole, like, family situation changed, where then I had a stepdad who played in a really cool rock band, or, like, blues band. So I wanted to become a drummer. So I played drums for, I would say, like 10 years or something. And I just stopped that in the last year of school because it was, like, too stressful to keep both things up. And then since then I've just never picked it up again. But I'm pretty good with piano. That's it. And, like, my musical background also doesn't only come from that. I would say it also comes from, like, my dad's side of the family. Like, he plays French horn in an orchestra in Berlin, like, very prestigious orchestra. And his whole family, like, they even have their own music school, and they're, like, all choir and singers, and it's, like, super insane. They all play, like, instruments in orchestras. It's crazy. My mom also used to play in an orchestra. So, like, that's the background I come from. Like, there's a lot of music all the time.
You were destined to be a musician, basically.
I was destined to become a classical musician even. So my rebellion is, I'm not becoming a classical musician. I'm doing the electro, like the new kids thing.
I was gonna say what went wrong then.
Yeah, actually, that's funny because I can tell you if you want. I can tell you what went wrong.
Go
So
ahead.
I have a cousin, okay? His name is Ludwig, and he played the cello too. And my grandma decided to pit us against each other and like, oh, but he's better than you. Why don't you practice? Right? So eventually I was like, okay, screw this. You can't get me to do what you want. And I was like, I'm just going to do this now. So that's the reason.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like you, rebellious in nature. So yeah, I can definitely understand that. But so you would consider, or you would say that you've had support from your family, like going into a musical career for your whole life, or had they ever doubted, like going into electronic music or anything like that?
I think no, they
Like
were
your family.
they were totally supportive, like financially and emotionally, and in whichever way you can support me. But I think they were still skeptical of like the whole artist thing, because like the traditional way of seeing it is like, oh, he's gonna go on parties, he's gonna DJ, he's gonna be drunk all the time, he's gonna take all sorts of drugs, and he's gonna be 28 and not have a job, right? Like that's I would say like the traditional DJ thing. So I basically proved them wrong now, right? Because I haven't drinking any alcohol for, I would say, like 3 years. I'm very, like, behaved, I would say, in terms of all of that, right? So now they understand that maybe I'm not that super crazy DJ guy. I just want to make fun music, and, like, they're very, very supportive. And they always have been, but there was, like, this, like protectiveness, right? Obviously, because they didn't want me to go under or something.
Yeah. Well, in that sense, you sound like you're more disciplined than me and Jesper. That's what I could say. Like,
I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think like I haven't always been, right. I had one incident where I thought I don't even know anything anymore. I thought I was dead, basically. So that has just put me in a point where I'm like, okay, maybe, right? I don't need that. I can be pretty funny even if I'm sober. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think everybody has to decide it for themselves, and I don't think my way is the right way. Like it's just my way, and I'm happy with it. So like, you know.
But I think that's really cool, actually, and I appreciate that at least one of us can be a good role model for these other like people trying to get into the scene.
That's what I always try to be, man. It's like you got to be a role model if you want to be a role model, right?
Yeah, well, obviously, but yeah, like I don't know. I've just fallen into the peer pressure pool, like everyone else who's in this scene. Like I'm not doing drugs or anything, but I am drinking a lot of alcohol, and like we do that with the boys when we sit in the booth, like almost every
Discord,
Friday night, and sit and like have a glass together and just on Discord. And
but that's become a norm during lockdown. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
anyway,
I'm also very lucky. Like before we wrap this up, I have a girlfriend, and she also doesn't drink, so I don't get pressured or anything. We just have like alcohol-free champagne, and we're both super happy. Like that's also very nice benefit for me.
And you still decide to drink champagne?
Because sometimes, no. Sometimes I think the value in actually having a glass of something to celebrate is very valuable. Like I think there's a lot of like psychological and like sociological, is that a word?
Yes.
Like value to just celebrating stuff properly. Like there's a difference between celebrating something with champagne or with a glass of water, to me. Right?
Okay, I respect that. That's a very good point.
Respect that.
I didn't even think about that. But like champagne, I would get like a glass of Fanta or something.
I mean, it's not champagne. It's like in German we call it Sekt. It's like the super super cheap champagne.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It actually just tastes like lemonade, but it's like you pour it out of a champagne bottle, so it's champagne.
We have the same
bubbly.
thing here. We have the same thing here, but it's more like cider here, I think, actually. But yeah, we have the same thing here. We give it to the kids.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that thing here as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to move on to Mo's musical career.
We haven't even talked about music, and we've done 37 minutes. We haven't even talked about your musical career yet.
So, the song that changed everything for you.
Oh, God.
Mammoth on Hexagon. I would say that was the song that kind of kicked things off for you. Talk us through that.
It is the song that kicked off everything, and I will gladly talk about it. But I think the song that actually kicked stuff off for me is You're Wild. Even though it's not
Really?
the first release, that was the release where people decided that Mo Falk was cool. That, like, Mammut was like my foot in the door kind of thing. Like, I, broke in to Hexagon and, like befriended everybody, and now I'm like part of the gang.
Yeah.
But I think Your Wild was the thing where I went from just this one guy on Hexagon to Mo Falk artist thing, right? And like I basically started having like this backstory and like, the weird vocal that doesn't actually have lyrics. Like there was a lot of like back lore, I would even call it, that then people were like all of a sudden interested in, whereas before they just liked the music. So, I mean, we can talk about both.
Well, I mean,
Whichever one you prefer.
it doesn't really matter to me. The one thing that I kind of want to say though is like I was gonna lead into that with this song. Like you've kind of established a very recognizable identity, like in terms of your sound, like your own sound. Even when I tune into your streams on Twitch, like I can always hear, even when you're trying to impersonate someone else, you can always hear hear that Mo Falk touch in it.
That is true.
And I feel like that's what they recognize on whenever you release on Hexagon or whenever you release on any label, to be honest.
Because I think if we're going to spend time talking about your releases, we should talk about some of the newer stuff you've done, because you've done some really cool collabs recently. Like the Timmy Trumpet collab was fucking sick.
That's a thing.
It was so, like, I was super surprised. I was like, wait, what? Timmy Trumpet, Mo Falk? When I first saw it, because it came up in my subscriptions and I listened to it and it was like, it wasn't what I expected, but it was super cool. And it was like, I think I want to talk about the development of your sound more than just the initial coming in, because I think it's quite clear that you broke into Hexagon and stuff and that really kicked it off for you. But like the recent stuff you've been doing has just been accelerating that. So talk us through about some of the collabs you've been working on.
First of all, that's very kind.
You're welcome.
Second, I think so. My sound, like, obviously started off with this like bass focused, sound design focused thing. Now I'm trying to do new stuff, new things that people may not have heard in that particular way. So the Snail with Timmy Trumpet, the collab, was actually one of the first ones where I really, like, I just went super ham. Like, everybody else would probably think, oh, he was probably stoned when he came up with that, because, like, I think it's really, really weird, right? I wasn't, but it's really weird. And that's kind of like the thing I try to do now, is just innovate something, maybe not do it the best way, right? Maybe I'm not the best at that new thing that I just came up with, but I hope that I'll come up with enough things that enough people will hear. They'll be like, oh, that guy always comes up with new stuff. Other than, like, he has a very particular sound. Because I do still have a very particular sound, even with the new things, but it's less just on the sound and more on, like, the creative process, if that makes sense. So
I get you, but being able to still hear your sound in that is something which is good, because I feel like a lot of people, when they develop their sound a lot, they lose a lot of what they came from, if you know what I mean. Whereas with some of this newer stuff you've done, you can really hear that you've still worked on it, So like with the Timmy Trumpet collab, would you say, like, who started the idea and who sent it to? How did that work out?
So I started it, and I actually, it's so funny. The project is still called Weird for Drop Gun. Because it started off as like, okay, I want to make something that could be Drop Gun X Mo Falk. Like, that was probably 2 years ago. Like, it's very, very long time ago. Yeah. And at the time, Your Wild was still fresh. So I used that sound to, I tried to like explore what I could do with it. And I came up with this like super gnarly, gritty, like clicking vowel bass click thing. I don't even know how to else explain it. And I made that. I was like, okay, that's cool. Now what do I do with it? No one's ever going to release something like this, right? And for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to try my best with it and just see what I can do. And I sent it to my manager. And at the time, I don't know how it was, like, I think I was talking to 2 different managers, my actual manager and the one I may have almost signed as my new manager. And that new manager had contacts with somebody that knew somebody that was the manager of Timmy, like something like this, right? Yeah. So my old manager, that is still my manager now, was like, okay, how about we try just sending it to him? What if he says yes? I was like, he's never going to say yes, right? But the timing was perfect, because at the time he was planning his EP, like his new album that he's like the Mad World album. And I guess he was looking for tracks that were like fitting, and he was like, "Yeah, we want to do the collab," and I was like over the moon. But that was like over a year ago. So since over a year ago, I've just been waiting on them to actually work on the track. So I've basically done like most of the stuff that is in the track now. But they kind of redid the second drop, redid some of the sounds, mixed it down properly, mastered it properly, because I, at the time, was pretty bad at that. I just had a cool idea, right? So they did all of that. And then, like, in the summer of 2020, they were like, okay, we're now going to work on the track. And I just assumed they were, like, already done with it. Like, they forgot that it's somewhere in their inbox and they were never going to do it. Like, I'd already, like kind of closed with it, I was like done. And then they're like, yeah, this is done now, we're gonna release it in that album. I was like, what, are you kidding me? Like, I can actually be the guy that has a Timmy Trumpet X Mo Falk thing, like what? And from there on, actually the coolest thing about that release, I still think, is the music video. Like the animated snail that's like super like physics based and like weird and animated. And I didn't even know they were doing that. Like one day, they're just in my inbox, yeah, we're going to post this today. I was like, you made an entire animated thing, and I was so blown away. I was like, what? This is so cool. How did nobody tell me? So
cool.
Yeah, like I think there's a lot of difference between like small upcoming artists, Mo Falk, and huge, big established Timmy Trumpet, who's like a team of 20 people working for him. Like that's what it feels like. Like they were just doing it because that's what they always do. And I was here like expecting it's just a normal release, but no, like they actually invest and like think about stuff, and it was really cool, like as an experience as well, to see how that stuff works, because I never had any contact with that.
When you sent this to Timmy Trumpet's team, had you already worked with Spinnin at that point then?
No.
You hadn't worked with Spinnin at that point, because I was gonna say the fact that you'd worked with Spinnin might have had some influence in that, but if you hadn't even released it, because like did that come because of the Timmy Trumpet stuff, or was that a separate thing? Like
that was totally
shout?
Separate. That had nothing to do with each other.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back and just like I just opened it on my computer, and I just want to see. So here, the project file was done in August 2019.
Wait, had you even released the Kiana Silva collab then?
Yeah, that one was earlier.
Okay.
But
yeah, that's what I'm thinking though, because that was on Hexagon with or was it on Spinnin? I can't remember.
Well, Hexagon was still spinning at that point, right?
Yeah, weren't they?
True.
Yeah.
True.
So that might technically had some influence,
Yeah.
So around that time, I just actually released, like the You're Wild and You Got the Love came out around that time as well. Tastes Good, remix, stuff like this, like the old school Mo Falk sound, basically. So it took, over a year to be released, which is insane.
That's
this isn't something we have written down, but I've just thought about this, considering we talked about Hexagon Spinning. Did you notice a big difference from Hexagon when they separated from Spinning, from working with them? Did you notice that from your side?
Not at all. I think the difference has come much later. Like, I think at the time when they split, I don't think that the difference was noticeable. Not to me, at least, at the time. I just see the difference now because they're just, like, blowing up with, like, all sorts of labels, doing, like, 8-10 releases a week, stuff like that. Like, for me, that's the difference now. At the time, when they switched, to me, that wasn't a big difference. Like, it came slowly afterwards, I would say.
It was a slow transition. Yeah, I would definitely say they're releasing a lot more music, and they're taking on a lot more upcoming artists than they were before.
I feel like that's a lot because of the pandemic, though, because you can see this in a lot of record labels, not just in the electronic scene either. There's a lot of artists just getting their singles signed because a lot of labels need to release music to actually be able to sustain themselves economically.
Yeah,
that's at least
since
what I've
there's
understood.
no more shows they can get a cut from or anything like that. Like all of the revenue comes basically from releases or publishing.
Yes,
which is crazy.
Yeah, it is like really crazy, but it has opened up a lot of doors for smaller artists to release on these labels now as well. So it's like both good and bad, because you can see that like the quality has decreased in a lot of record labels because of the pandemic and because of them signing so many songs. But like I said, it's opened up a lot of doors, and a lot of artists has been given a chance to get noticed and to create their like a more solid future in music because of this. as well.
That is true.
So it's
my
really
only
interesting.
my only concern with that is that even though it is amazing and it gives people more opportunity, the people that get the opportunity because there's much more of them now actually have less total opportunity, if that makes sense. So think about it, like you have one release on Hexagon. I'm just going to take Hexagon as an example. It works for every label, but it's very apparent there. One release per month. The focus of that entire month is on that one release. So maybe 1 or 2 artists, right? Now you're going to have 40, 50 releases every month. So all of that attention, right, of that month is going to be split by 40. So if you're an upcoming artist, right, you get much less attention, but you still get on a big label, and you know it's much easier to get a foot in the door, which is good in one way. But I think the payback also becomes more divided and less.
I think
big, if that makes sense.
I think this full loops round to what we were talking about at the beginning about being a content creator, because the people then who get their foot in the door that will do well and are still getting signed by this label are the people who are actively doing more than the label is doing to push themselves as an artist. And I think
smart.
that always shows. So it's like the people who are smart about it now can get a foot in the door more easily and then can take it to the next level better because they can develop their personality through their content.
Exactly. So what I'm kind of thinking, like when you get into these record labels, because there are going to be people who get their records signed on Hexagon, for instance, again, because we're talking about it, and nothing else happens. They keep signing music to Hexagon, but they don't get noticed at all. And there are going to be people who still get noticed in this huge cluster of people, you know. And they're the ones who are still going to be in the game and still going to get their records signed by these labels once this whole shift is over. And once we if we even go back, I don't even know, but like if we go back to the old model, you know, where you only sign a few tracks a month, and they're going to be the ones who get signed and get their releases out because of this.
I mean, I think I'm very curious to see if there's actually going to be a way back. Like, I wish there will be. Like, I hope there will be. Maybe not to the exact way it was before, but just like a little reverse. But I wonder if that's really going to happen, because there's not going to be less artists now, right? There's just going to be more. And the availability, like we said, of resources and training and everything is also going up. So the overall quality should also go up, and more music and everything. I don't think this, like, either the smart move is to cut back and make things super unique again and like super focused on one thing, or it is to, you know, do a lot of things and hope that one of them becomes very successful. I can't tell you which one it is. I just hope that whichever one it is will be good for me.
I personally think the best move at the moment, this is my personal opinion from analyzing the scene and what I'm personally focusing on, is the whole content creation, and possibly like not, because I feel like a lot of people have taken this quantity approach to music and they're not focusing on quality as much. They're just releasing as much as possible and they're getting streams and they're doing well, but they're not growing as an artist. They're just growing their streams, if you get me. And it's like the best thing to do is to take some time to release each song, maybe release once every 2 months or once every month if you're doing it full time. Make proper content around the release, make constant content for all your social medias, and try and grow yourself as an artist. And I think the unique approach works if you're someone who's already established. So if you're like Martin Garrix or someone, you can go down the route of like, he's gone down the deeper route, like he's making that pressure and he doesn't release as much, and he can do that. I think if you're us, you have to have the whole package still and be consistent until something takes off. And It's I think there's a lot of different ways that you can blow up now. So for example, I'd say with your career, Mo, you've been like walking up the steps gradually and like building it up, like slowly getting bigger collabs, releasing on bigger labels. For a lot of people, like let's take Alan Walker, for example, he had that one track blow up on NCS and then he became one of the biggest artists in the world. It's like, I think that's the two main ways people do it at the moment. They either like slowly take step by step and make things bigger and bigger, make more content, become like build a bigger fan base, or you literally just have that one hit which blows up. I think they're the main options now.
But also, when's the last time one artist has become super successful out of nowhere?
It just doesn't happen anymore, I don't think.
It doesn't happen anymore. Like maybe Billie Eilish, but she was super successful before that too. and she like, I don't think that the like Avicii, Martin Garrix, Alan Walker, those things don't happen, or at least as frequently anymore.
I wouldn't say that it was ever a frequent thing.
Yeah, obviously
happened.
Not. But
there is like one artist.
The
there is like one artist a year or every 2 years that happens to, and it's not weird that it hasn't happened in 2020 because of the climate of 2020 and because the climate of music. Because there's been so much music. Like this is an anomaly in history. Like especially in everywhere, to be honest. But like in music, it is such an anomaly in music that this much music gets put out on Spotify and in the world in 1 year, and so there's not even room
the
for
money's going down.
Yeah.
The other thing about what Mo was saying though was like so like there isn't really space at the top, and I would say the only anomaly I can think of recently is someone like Immenbeck. You know what I mean?
Yes,
true. And that's like it's still not the same as like the way like Garrix or the next Avicii or something. It's not that. It's still a massive artist who's coming up. You know what I mean? But I think still...
that's the point now. Like I just watched a video from Ludwig actually. I don't know. Big shout out to him because he's cool. It's like the biggest Twitch streamer. I don't know why I'm shouting in mouth. He said that if you get like that burst of interest from people, like that clout from whatever it is, even as an artist, you need to have the back catalog. Like you need to have 20 releases that people will also enjoy. You need to have content that people will then all of a sudden, take up on. And then you need to have your own infrastructure as well of like actually then continuing to grow and use that growth to, grow further. Whereas a lot of the time I feel like anywhere, right? Like artists, content creators, anybody gets that growth, gets clout because of a tweet they said or, anything. And then they can't capitalize on it because they don't have the infrastructure or the back catalog or all of that stuff that then would push them up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why nowadays we see more of like relatively established artists in quotation marks blow up, because those are the ones that actually have that back catalog. And once they get a little bit of clout, they have the ability to then capitalize on it.
Yes,
I think that's
a very good point, actually. Like, I think that's more relevant in terms of content than music now, though, because I think, as you're saying, it's a personality thing. Like, when someone's genuinely invested in a brand, they want to know everything about you. Like, if you absolutely love an artist, you're gonna go and watch the videos around them. You want to know what they're like as a person, So
I'm really cool. Trust me.
I think this is a pretty good place to sort of wrap everything up. So like a section we normally do on the podcast is New Music Friday. I don't know about you guys. I haven't checked it this week.
I actually checked. I forgot to write it in a reminder, but I did actually check. And I didn't even tell Mo about this. He probably hasn't done anything either.
I have as well.
I haven't checked. Oh, okay.
So you have checked your New Music Friday. Mo.
I mean, I have checked the beginning of it, and I have like 1 or 2 releases that I want to shout out.
Okay. See, Tom, you're the only one who didn't do your job this week.
I'm the only one this week.
Yeah.
Tom.
Okay, I'm gonna do something else, and I'm gonna say my favorite Hexagon release. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'm sorry, Mo. It's not you.
Oh. That's fine.
That's only because I like some of your music on Spinning Better. But no, my favorite Hexagon release is probably Daylight by Malarkey and Mick Mizzou. I'd say that's such a cool track.
That one is so sick. Yeah, I love that one.
And yeah, I was just thinking it's very relevant to what we've done today. So do you have a favorite Hexagon release, Mo? You can say New Music Friday as well, but just. Do you have a favorite?
It actually is the same thing, dude. It's the same thing. Because the track I saw today actually is on Hexagon. It's on Time Machine. And that track, I've been... Okay. So, do you want a little bit of backstory?
Go for it.
Okay. So, I do this show, Ideas of the Month, every month, where I just show the best ideas that aren't out yet. And one of those tracks has now been released like 2 months later. And it's by RDGO. It's called Higher, I think. And it's on Time Machine, Retrovision's label. And it's such a banger. Like, it's the perfect blend because between tech house and electro house, but also some like deep and bass house. It's just so cool. It does everything right. And I'm so excited that like from like me just discovering it in my inbox on like just some ID submission to it now being released on like Retrovision sublabel. For me, like today when I saw that, I was like, God damn, that's really
so
cool.
sick. That's so
cool.
sick.
I need to check that out later. Can you send me a DM like with that song?
I will.
I really want to hear it now. Because that's
I
the
mean,
kind of
just
stuff
go
I
on
like.
Retro's. Just go on Retro's Insta. He's probably gonna have spammed it everywhere.
All right, yeah, I could do that, I guess.
But I'll send you a link as well.
What's your New Music Friday then, Jesper?
Well, I don't have a super hype backstory, so this is not going to be as interesting. I literally just went on my release radar, and this is coincidentally also Hexagon.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
We're doing well
Can you
today.
imagine? Can you imagine? Yeah. Just shout out to Hexagon. Sign me. Yeah, but it's actually on Generation Hex. It looks like it's Generation Hex, which is kind of strange to me because it is Drop Gun. Their new song Taste Like. I don't know how new it is because it was on my release radar. It might have been last week. I have no idea. It was on my release radar, and it's super cool because it doesn't have a call melody. It's just like basses and chops and all that. And then there's a response melody coming out of nowhere, which sounds really crispy. It's so
good.
Cool. Yeah, it's so cool. I love that too.
So I actually like this week's releases a lot. There's also the new Retrovision track, which is pretty insane. The To Be Alright, which, you know, since we're talking about all the content thing, he made on Twitch live and I saw it. And now that I saw him make it, I'm like really invested in the release for some reason. And I can't even explain why. It's just that like I'm emotionally attached because I saw him make it live. I'm like, it's so good. But
it's like me and
I can't explain it better.
It's like me and I'm Back. I watched you make that on stream as well, and I really like that song because of it.
I think it's so powerful, actually.
Yeah,
but,
it's
thank
really
you.
dope. I like that song a lot.
Anyway, we're coming. We've been talking for an hour already, basically.
Dude, I couldn't even tell. The time passed. So
I have to say, this has been
so quick.
This has been super insightful. I really have enjoyed this episode. We talked about some really good stuff. So I appreciate you coming on, Mo. It's been an absolute pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Same here. It was a pleasure too.
And I think that pretty much wraps it up for this week. So as always, if you want to see an artist and we haven't said we're bringing them on yet, drop it below. We'll try and get them on. And tell us any topics you want to talk about on the next podcast. So I've been Tom Wilson. We've had Mo Falk and we've had Jonth on as well. And we'll see you next week. Peace.
Later.
Bye-bye.